Hello, all, and welcome to the second episode of Blizzard Buzz, the leading Edmonton podcast, and the only one. I am Ara, and this is my co host Caliph, and this week we've got two special guests with us. Care to introduce yourselves?
Hello, I'm Raman Aman, GM for Quebec City and former Edmonton goalie. Possibly sometime future Edmonton goalie.
Future Edmonton goalie.
It's not tampering if I've told both GMs for like 10 seasons, right?
No,
Who
it's
knows
not
at this
different.
point?
It definitely is insider trading, though.
Definitely.
Yeah, unbelievable. No, but that's
Oh,
legal here.
Terrible. If you keep the bad puns up, I'm just going to have to leave.
No!
I'm sorry, you legally. That was something you agreed to tolerate when you agreed to come on the show.
That'll teach me to not read the paperwork.
See, this is what's great with having our own legal department. We can easily entrap you. But anyways, jokes aside, welcome to our podcast. We are happy to have you all aboard.
Oh, yeah, and then I guess there's Gwen over there, too.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
Gwen,
here. I'm the co-GM of QCC, and I am currently the first center of Edmonton.
I know we're both very happy to have you both on. There is definitely a QCC to Edmonton pipeline, so having you guys is... it just seems very
I'd
fitting.
love to talk all about that during this episode.
Well, if you want to be technical about it, I was a Edmonton to QCC pipeline.
That's very true.
Yeah, the pipeline goes both ways, hey? Are you going to be sniping us both on our next Recreates, Ramen?
I mean, that will depend entirely on what picks I have, but wouldn't turn it down. Pipelines are always an interesting conversation. I mean, I think they're overrated in the SHL. I don't think there's as much truth to them as anyone really says, but there's definitely trends and batches of players that come in. And I think there have been a couple of true pipelines over the years.
I mean, it is probably overstated to a certain extent. I know we kind of meme that, hey, Cake and I, whoa, we've got the St. Louis pipeline, but like, realistically, no, not really.
No.
Well, St. Louis is having its first breath in a while, though.
That's true. Yeah.
Definitely is.
So there was some recent achievement from the both of you. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your cup winning season?
Oh, I thought you were going to say the achievement was getting rid of all of my draft picks.
Well, you know what? I resonate with that on a level that is difficult to understand. The lack of stress of just doing nothing on draft night is
You see, this was an elaborate ploy to actually have me continue doing homework nonstop.
The cup win was huge. I know we're all still really excited about it. The players definitely earned it, and the whole season I think really came as kind of a shock to us. Going in, we weren't expected to be bad. I think we were like 7th or 8th in TPE at the start, so like looking at a mid-table run with a pretty big rookie class, drafted 5 rookies. 4 of them maintained activity and earned up to the 350 cap this season. So that was all great. And it would have been a successful season regardless of how we ended up in the standings. But then to just kind of hit that mix of coaching, earning, and FHM hot streaks to go all the way and grab the Lorifer and then make the cup run was just really incredible.
Yeah, the momentum was definitely there, but also it was really funny because several of us in the front office have been telling our rookies, hey, this isn't supposed to be happening. Be careful.
Temper your expectations. I think we said that several times this season.
Yeah.
And in typical QCC fashion, the rookies said, no, we will not temper our expectations, and just blew us all away.
Now, you see, this is why we're in a rebuild this year.
I don't know how I'm going to justify calling it a rebuild when the lowest TPE player we have is like 330.
Yeah.
I don't think I can pull that off this time.
I know no one is looking forward to staring down the Citadels in this coming season. I'll be honest. What, if anything, do you guys plan on changing about your general approach to winning?
Well, my main strength is honestly the scouting side, even if I do have a basis in other picks, like, tactics. So my plan is just to continue going on the sort of like how someone is when we communicate and assume they're telling the truth as you go through it. They'll tell you what they plan on it, and their actions go along the way. So if you make sure to check if they're doing interested prospects, it will not go so long way too. You can always find at least one or two that are eager and willing to earn and are showing that they're able to, while also being an energy in the locker room.
Yeah, I think going into this season, it's really about keeping the gang together and active and just as excited as they were last time. Obviously, the big change roster-wise is we added 2 wingers from Vancouver in a trade just yesterday. And we're going to try and keep them together, keep the chemistry that they had from their last 2 seasons together, and really just push it back. But if I had to say there's a difference between last season's Cup team and this season's, it's depth. We're not relying on 5 rookies to just dramatically outperform their TPE anymore. We've got 3 solid lines that go all the way down. So we'll be able to let players really flourish in the special teams roles if we want them to play, and then just stick to our game plan and hope that we can run any line on our roster against anybody else in the league.
Yeah, on top of that, we only lost 1 player from last season to now. So having retained essentially full strength and then some is definitely going to lead us a long way.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. I know I've been hogging them for questions, but if you want to ask them something, Ara,
It's fine for right now. I'm just reviewing a few things real quick. Sorry.
Okay.
Aside for some WJC nonsense.
Well, don't mind me as I press Gwen a little bit harder on there. On a scouting perspective, do you have any, would you say, like secret weapon questions that you tend to really use to separate the wheat from the chaff? We all know getting good people is tough. I think everyone in this call has scouted at one point or other.
Yes.
No. Or go ahead.
Yes.
Yes.
Still have to take over.
That sounded pained.
Yes. Especially when you deal with some of the more unique rookies.
It's okay. Don't worry. Once you come up to Edmonton, it's going to get a lot worse.
Oh, I'm aware. But
yeah, cakes in there. Like, what the hell?
Yeah. But anyways, Gwen, when you're looking through the most recent draft class and are looking for the top rookies, what criteria and what sort of questions do you have in mind when scouting?
Well, I'm not going to tell the big one that I think a lot of people miss. It's an obvious question, though. But the main things are kind of just not necessarily the questions themselves, but I mean, there's the standard questions like, hey, what are your plans? Do you know how to do these things? Like, do you know how to make money? Do you know how to earn TP? Because I know there's some that don't, or there's some that misunderstand. And there's a lot of them that are like really eager but don't understand the workload that can be taken to, go the build that they want to, and helping clarify some of that can give them a sort of foundation to stand upon, and on their reactions to a lot of those questions, more on if it phases them or if they recognize them, like, yeah, sure, whatever, can on its own determine if they're going to earn well, which isn't as important in the J. But still making sure they get to the 425, or at least get them encouraged enough to want to be able to engage even after their players are done, is really important for the health of the league. So it's more checking like who they are and what they're willing to do.
Yeah, I think if there's anything to add to that, really, it's the J is about getting people engaged in the league.
Yeah.
And the kind of questions that Gwen's talking about are good indicators of whether someone has a passing interest in, like, I make a player, I click buttons, I watch Sim go, or if they want to know how the league works. Anytime I get a rookie that asks questions back about, how does the sim engine work? How do your streams work? How do I be the best superstar that's ever played the game? Like, that kind of thing tells me that someone wants to get engaged at a level that will keep them moving forward, as opposed to what you see a lot of in like pre-read rounds, which is people who have that initial spark, but as soon as the bank dries up and they don't have easy tasks to do, they fall behind very quickly. And that's kind of the blessing and curse of the SHL and big money leagues like it, which is if you don't have the staying power to do something above and beyond the weekly tasks, you're not going to last too long.
Yeah, a couple of good examples of rookies that are the kind of people we'd be looking for. Our first overall from last season, Wallerin, kind of fit the perfect bill for us because we needed a bunch of defense, but also throughout the season he began asking about how FHM works, wanted to know how it worked, was interacting with the rest of our rookies, but also especially when he got into the WJC, he's probably asked Roman and I a quintillion questions while still being active in the server. In terms of this season, BV would be fitting that bill perfectly if we needed a goalie.
Yeah, I know. That was Lotherin was definitely one of the big people where we were all looking for the draft, going, all right, who's gonna get it?
I'm shocked that he fell as far as he did in the SHL draft. I think you could have taken him top 5, top 3, first overall, and still had a slam dunk pick.
Oh, agreed. But God, when I saw where he fell, it's like, oh my God, why is he falling so low?
But hey, I mean, New Orleans saw him.
Yep.
They got a slam dunk of a pick, and I think that might be the steal of the draft.
I would agree.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Especially at defense, which is a position that's so important. Position doesn't mean a whole lot in the J. In the SHL, it's a huge deal, and finding a cornerstone defenseman is hard.
I mean, I know that was honestly, I think he might have gotten more value. I think Joe might have gotten more value out of that late round pickup of Lollerin than Ace did with his early picks, which might be a little controversial, but
don't let Ace hear you say that.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, Lollerin was. I mean, they're already on the All-Star team, right? To jump back over to you, Roman, you've played in and around, both leagues fairly consistently. You've had major successes across both of them. I know we have that joke of, I just imagine the player behind the screen. How many more seasons is it going to take before you get a Super Bowl ring on each finger? But what do you think is the biggest difference? Either tactics-wise or just managing the team-wise between playing in the J and managing in the SHL?
I mean, it sucks to say this, but it comes down to how big your bank account is. Because TPE matters a hell of a lot more in the SHL than it does in the J. And if you don't have the staying power to earn to that 1,500, 1,600 TPE range, then it's hard to be anything more than a depth piece on a championship team. And I got mixed feelings about that personally. Like, I don't think it's the greatest for the league that SHL GMs look at prospects and say they're not max earning, don't bother unless we have extra second-round picks. But it's the reality of things. You take a team like the old Edmonton rebuild. We grabbed a bunch of high picks. We busted on a few of them because that's just how rebuild's going to work. but we got a core group of people that were going to come play together. They, for lack of a better term, they practiced and trained together because they knew they'd be on the line together from the day we drafted them. They planned their builds to be complementary. They knew what roles they were going to be in, and they worked towards that from their second season in the J all the way till lifting the cup. And it takes that kind of dedication to build a team from the ground up if you're going through a rebuild. If you're taking like the New England or Philadelphia approach, which is draft consistency and just be a competitive, if not necessarily top tier team every single season, then you still have to find late picks year after year who are going to fit that mold and earn extremely well and commit to the team environment. And it's hard to do because you want to find the balance between giving a player what they want and giving the team what it needs to succeed. And that comes from carefully balancing when your competitive window is going to be with the right players who fit the system. And if you want to talk about like the coaching side of things, I think tactically it's very similar. You have to have a scheme that works. You have to have players that fit the scheme. And you have to be able to make minor but not major adjustments based on the competition. The teams that try and grow out the entire game plan and change all of their tactics every single game because they lost one, they aren't going to succeed.
Right.
And the teams that run a scheme poorly, they don't have the players that fit the tactics, or the tactics don't mesh together, it doesn't matter how much TPE you have, you're not going to succeed. And in the J, where the TPE margins are so thin, you can kind of get away with a lot. And there's a lot of randomness to it. In the SHL, if you don't have the combination of TPE, builds, and tactics, you are not going to make the top 4 teams. And it's pretty clear every season who the real contenders are going to be.
I kind of want to actually stack on that context with something that I experienced a few days ago in the IHF. If anyone has focused on the IHF, they know Quebec is, our average TPE, I believe, is under 1,000 because I'm trying to breathe life back into it.
Yeah, and our median TPE is way below that.
No, we're being hard carried by our first line. But the point of bringing it up is, our team played Germany, which has these decent players. We're talking about at least 1,300 TPE and whatnot for all except for maybe their fourth line, and we didn't win, but we outshot them. We beat them in face-offs quite comfortably. We have had more takeaways, and our giveaways were the same. The only reason why that team managed to win is because they just had better players, but they were that close to losing, is what I was saying, despite the huge TPE difference. We shouldn't be close to winning any of these games.
Yeah, I don't understand what we did wrong, right? We had an enforcer, we had a goon, we had an agitator. We were running 3 shadows.
Wait.
Hold on.
Yeah,
that doesn't sound remotely legal.
These are ramen approved tactics.
Wait.
Don't lump me in whatever this completely illegal nonsense is.
Listen, right? If you don't have 3 setup men all on the same line, are you even playing the game properly?
Hey, at least that's legal. 3 shadows is just asking for a fine and a loss because they would all try and block the same person.
I wonder if they shadow each other, or when you get 3 on a line, do you unlock the poltergeist?
Now I want to see a live sim where someone has 3 shadows and see if they just all roam together to just mug somebody.
Yeah, actually, that would be really funny. Do they all target the same person, or is it just a wave where they function like the defensive line in football, where they just fucking tear somebody down?
This is why I think we need to have some sort of tournament in the SHL where we get live sims and completely unrestricted tactical nonsense. And the goal is not to win, but to just produce the jankiest, awful abomination of FHM that we've ever witnessed.
I feel like people do that for fun sometimes, though.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
I've seen teams in preseason run like all goons.
You know what? That's what I'm doing next season.
I'm like,
I'm gonna run 3 shadows.
It's not going to help you learn anything. So if you need to know something about your team or your system, it's probably not great. But
I'll help you, but it'll be fun.
Preseason's preseason. Everyone knows the worst thing that you can ever have for a season is a good preseason.
Oh, no, don't say that. You're going to make us cry over here.
I'm sorry. If your preseason is first place, you are doomed.
We were so happy.
No, everyone knew where it was all trending
Mhm.
because, like, in our locker room, everyone was like, "Stop the clock! Stop the clock!"
You're like, stop it.
Yep.
Stop the tournament. It's over.
I've been on the receiving of that too many times.
I mean, hey, to be fair, right? If there's anyone that can do completely unhinged nonsense in the preseason and not learn anything, Gwen, you've got Ramen as an asset. I don't think you need to.
I'm
I don't
not
think you
sure
need to
which
run
of us
tests.
he's trying to insult here.
Who fucking knows at this point?
And just like that, we've made Egg angry because we've sworn in front of his kids again. I'm gonna tell him to watch it anyway. Maybe tell him not to do it with kids though. Ara, did you have questions for him? I can keep going if you want. I've got loads of questions for these two. Okay, I'm gonna take that as. All right, everybody. I am the new host. Ara, my co-host, is going to be somewhere else. Okay, so I guess this is one for the two of you, really. With taking on so many rookies all in one go, and managing to keep so many of them online, have you guys discovered what you'd say is like a special sauce in keeping players invested? I know at some point we're going to be asking Southpaw the same question, another GM who's pretty famous for taking people and getting them into the game. But to the extent that QCC is producing very, very good players, and it's only been 2 seasons since I've been on the All-Star, since I've been heading up that committee, but your players feature very prominently and very often. I don't think it can really be considered luck anymore. So,
Well, I can start on this because I think a lot of my knowledge on that subject goes back to the first big draft class that I took after taking over the head GM spot. In season 72, we were not in a good spot to compete. We had second overall in the draft, but we didn't have the volume of picks that we needed. And so we made the really uncomfortable decision to punt, basically. We sold a couple of players for future draft picks. We sold second overall and delayed it by a season. And that pick ended up actually being, I think, second overall again. Or whatever it was high. But we made that decision to take an off year, which I don't like doing in the J, because no matter how we crunched the numbers, it just wasn't going to come together. And what we ended up with was a pretty hefty number of picks with a lot of roster spaces to fill in a large draft class. And we got the Solbergs, we got Selly, we got Pyro, who would be our defensive monster for 4 seasons and then go on to GM Kelowna. We grabbed Vic really late in the draft. We grabbed a ton of players all in one draft class. And some of them fit the mold in our scouting report that was instant success, the kind of player who can just carry a locker room on their own. And we love to take those high. But we also had a lot of users who we drafted later who fit the mold of, having all the tools there, but not really knowing how to use them. And what worked for us in that class was two things. The rookies themselves being engaged and active and having a place to talk to each other kept them all motivated. In fact, I think our 74 class still has their own private group chat that they use, even though they've long since graduated.
They do.
And that, if you can get your players keeping each other accountable and engaged, pinging each other for tasks, comparing their TPE, playfully, not in a cutthroat, mean-spirited way, but as a way of building each other up, then you've got a locker room that's going to run itself. And there were times throughout that core where, I know both my co-GM at the time and I had some really difficult issues in real life go on. And we let that locker room more or less govern itself for a month. And they were completely fine because they carried each other and they all wanted to commit to success. But the other thing that works that I think is, if not unique to Quebec, it's certainly something that we have polished and put our own stamp on, is the structure of our team. We've got a fairly large war room, and within that war room, we've got 3 different roles that users can opt into. And those are mentors, scouts, and coaches. Coaches, pretty self-explanatory. Anybody who wants to get involved in FHM, learn the ropes of things, and be responsible for submitting lines. I think we've got 4 or 5 of those with varying levels of expertise. So if I'm out or if Gwen's out, someone is still capable of making adjustments on the fly. Our scouts obviously help us scout the entire class. It's just an impossible job to do as a 1-person team or a 2-person team. You can't rely on just the GMs if you want to fully scout everybody. And having a team of scouts,
season, but it's just not worth it.
There's a difference between it being possible and it being effective. And I really don't think that 2 people can scout a 60-person class and give every user the attention that they deserve to really glean what they're going to bring to the league and to the team.
That's true.
But the last role that I think is the most important for us is the mentors. I loved my time on the rookie mentor team. When I was a rookie myself, I loved having rookie mentors able to ask any question to and get advice and get background on how the league works and how tasks work. But there's only so many mentors and there's a lot of people to answer. And the moment you stop being a rookie, you can still ping those people and they will still absolutely help because they're wonderful people, but you're not their priority. And having dedicated mentors within QCC who can be tagged at any time by anybody on the roster for any question that they have and encouraging those questions has cultivated an environment where everybody is comfortable learning and asking questions and staying engaged. And I think that's why we keep so many people active, is because we've got people there to check in and make sure you're doing all right and make sure you're getting the most out of the week.
To add on to that, I think part of the reason why they're so great as well is because they're part of the team and you don't necessarily feel like you're screaming into an area where a lot of people have eyes on you. At least within the team, there's less people staring at you and a lot of them are more likely to pump you up in a way that a Discord of 100.
The team chat, the rookie channel, you've got a lot of spaces there that you can work with.
Yeah, I know it really. Hearing you speak about the worm in that particular way makes me wonder: am I playing in a QCC team right now? Am I GMing a QCC team right now? The large war room, the specialization, that definitely, I can see how that would be a phenomenal asset, especially in how you describe the self-sufficiency of it. The sort of self-sustaining nature of what you guys have built over there. I think if I could, if I'd like to take a moment about who are some of these impactful players, and when you describe moving them into a particular role, what sort of approach do you guys have for bringing them into that setting? when do people just self-identify, or do
Or
you
is
sort
it
of push them?
something you actively push them towards or guide them to? I guess that's what we're trying to get to. Sorry for cutting you off, Taylor.
No, you're good. It's fine.
Are you talking like locker room, war room rules, or are you talking about like player tactical stuff?
More locker room. I'll move to tactics later. I know that you're both very, very tactically aware. I do want to pick your brains on it. I'm not sure how much I can get you to reveal on a podcast, but
I'm super happy to talk about locker room stuff because I think every team deserves to be able to have that information, especially new GMs. Like, I want every locker room to be as cool as ours. I just also want to beat you.
See, it's the nice thing is that we're not in opposition as GMs.
Especially in the J. The SHL, the goal as an SHL player is to win the cup. The goal as a JGM is to grow the league and encourage users to have fun and stick around. I've had seasons that I think are super successful where we didn't win the cup, and I've had a cup season where we stumbled ass backwards into winning a cup, and kind of we celebrated, but it was almost weird. It was like, this wasn't the plan. This wasn't really like the team we thought that would lift the cup, and we're here. We're happy. We're having a blast, but it wouldn't be on my top 3 seasons of all time that represent good GMing. But to answer your question, we've got a large war room because Quebec is a team that's been around for a while, and it's built a culture of encouraging everyone to stick around and feel like they're part of the team and part of the brand. We don't kick out players from the team channels when they graduate. Anyone with the alumni role has access to all the same channels that the team does. I know not everyone feels the same way, but I swear by it. I think it's the single most important part of our success.
I mean, it's like the same reason why a lot of schools allow their alumni to personal IDs to go through that school after.
Yeah, if you feel attached to it, you want to stay involved. And we've got a large war room, which is comprised largely of alumni, because they feel like QCC helped build them into the SHL user that they are today, and they want to give back to that team. So it's not, I haven't had to go fishing for people to fit certain roles. It's always been a case where I've said, hey, I need people to tell me whether they want the scout role, the mentor role, or the coach role, or any combination thereof. They tell me what they want. Obviously, some are more active than others. You're going to have that anywhere. But when you build a culture that's about being a team and a family and something more than just your player nice, you're not going to have any shortage of people who want to contribute and make that team better. Our alumni celebrate our cup wins just as much as our players do. And that is just a testament to the kind of culture that Evok and Flex built. I certainly didn't build it myself. I inherited it. I hope that I've added good contributions to it and made it better. But from day one, it's been a team with a singular mindset, and it's something that all of us carry forward.
Well, thank you very much. That is definitely, it's the sort of opinion you can only have when you've had that level of experience and growth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gwen, for someone who's a little bit, sorry, Ara.
I was going to say thank you, Raman. It's been very enlightening to hear about that, and actually gives me a few ideas in the coming few weeks and seasons, which I'll detail further later. But anyways, moving on to Gwen. You had a question for her?
Yeah, so I know our perspective is significantly less far-seeing than Raman's. Do you think that there's do your opinions differ from his in any substantial ways, and why might you think that is?
So it wasn't the only reason, but a part of the reason why I got tired of Ada, despite still loving the team. I live JFK, I live fancy, and I love a lot of people there. but part of it was the fact that I felt like half the time I was talking into the void, and that was weirdly isolating. And even from a standpoint of turning towards St. Louis or QCC, or when I was drafted in Edmonton, I would slowly start talking into those places more. Even if I still tried to contribute to Nevada and I still try to build up something. I think that having that place for people to turn to and just kind of chat with, perhaps separately from the SHL, can go a long way. And I think that's partly how we're able to actually get the Quebec Federation's activity slowly up in a way that some other federations may not be able to do. I definitely think it's the activity.
Yeah, I'm definitely very inclined to agree with you there. I know when I was writing just about teams and applications in general, that was when my perspective really opened, and I went, "Wow, Egg does like way more for like everyone knows that he does a lot, but like he does way more than even people think." I think
I think the memes of Ed not being an elite GM, it like have overtaken his identity. When Egg is a huge locker room hype man, and that the team would not be where it is, and would not have gotten to the successes it had without the way that he helped run the locker room.
Ara, did you have any questions for our two guests? I know it's been a little bit touch and go with the two of us as co-hosts this time around, but
It's been all right. Admittedly, I'm not as well versed on the GM side of the SHL or SMJHL as y'all, so I've been mostly listening to, I guess, broaden my knowledge of it. I guess my main questions for y'all is well, since Caleb's getting into GMing now, and I'm soon to follow for San Diego, what advice do y'all have for future GMs or aspiring GMs in the coming seasons to get, or I guess, to help them build a successful locker room like you've developed with QCC in Quebec?
I think from a scouting perspective, it's really just finding people that already match with those that are already in your war room. Part of that thing can be pretty easy if you're not your war room, your locker room. Some of that can be pretty easy if you have a lot you're familiar with the. I'm saying, if you have a lot in common with your locker room, you can be like, okay, does this person vibe with me? If I like them, my locker room is probably going to like them, if that lines up. But if it doesn't, you'll have to be a little bit more people-ready and kind of figure out the vibe of who would probably fit best in the locker room more than anything else.
Yeah, I think it's about building a brand. Every locker room has its own personality to it, and you can have a great user who doesn't mesh well with the locker room, and you can have a user who otherwise might struggle, but just flourishes in a particular team. I've added players, I've moved players out of my team based on locker room fit, and I've seen players succeed with a change of environment because they found a locker room. And I don't think that there's a single right answer for what your team culture needs to be. And I think the diversity of team cultures that exists in the SHL is a strength and not a weakness, because everybody has the type of team they want to go back to. Edmonton is a very high energy, sometimes chaotic and silly, but very motivated and competitive locker room. They want to chase the championship. They know it takes to get there. They definitely take teams want to and see that.
You sound like you're 2 miles away.
Oh, I know you're. Hey, Robin, you're fading out pretty hard there.
Oh, no.
I think it
Is it better now?
Much better, yeah.
Okay, I've been pacing, and apparently if I get too far away from my computer,
Oh,
I just disappear into the void.
oh, you're another walk and talker. All right,
I'm
fantastic.
absolutely a walk and talker. Okay,
Oh, I knew I
will
liked you.
stay.
Okay.
I will stay within this safe box of good connection. Short version: every team's got an identity of their own and a brand, and you have to find the right fit for you as a player. And then as a GM, you just have to be able to identify people who are not only going to be good in the SHL, but the type of person who gels with your locker room and wants to be a big part of it. And sometimes a good player isn't a great locker room fit. Sometimes an otherwise okay player will flourish in the right team. And as a GM, I think the first question you want to ask yourself is, what is my team identity? What kind of people are going to fit here best? And what kind of strategy can I build to get competitive by acquiring those people at the right time?
Honestly, even then, like winning a cup brings a lot of energy to the locker room and a lot of energy into the people that participated in it. That to the extent that I feel like it has a lasting power in having people stay and actually contribute further in the league, because it's so electric when they get that cup and they're able to stand. At least in QCC, the emote chains that we do.
Yeah, I know there are people who say that the J isn't about winning, and they're right. It's about developing players. But one of the best ways to keep people motivated is by winning, and it's something that builds itself. You build a winning team, it keeps people engaged. Those engaged users help you win games. Both of those two things need to happen together, and you're not going to really have one without the other.
I know that it just keeps going back to the self-sustaining nature of what you've got going. To speak to the both of you then, and to really harness the two different perspectives that you might bring, when is it that you know that, oh, this is a player that I want to invest in? This is somebody, I want to teach them tactics. I want to teach them scouting. Maybe you see a job come up and you kind of give them a nudge, like, hey, you should go for that. What's do you have any particular insights that you can offer us on that?
I know I've got mine. I think I want to take Gwen's input first.
I think the moment that they show they're willing to learn and have the energy, I think that goes a long way into checking if that's a user we truly want to invest in, even if after they graduate from the J into their own SHL team. Because at that point, they've got that curiosity, they've got the interest to actually want to contribute further. And I think that is pretty much the indicator to show it. That and, well, hitching off really well to talk to them in the first place. But that's, or if you have that already, you're going to be drafting them anyway.
Yeah, I think for me, like that's exactly it. And the moment, that aha moment when I know that I got someone that's a lock, is when we go from scouting questions to a complete tangential sidebar conversation. If I get distracted from scouting you because we've just started talking about something that we're both interested in, and the scouting conversation becomes like an hour-long random conversation between people on the internet, you're doing very well. You're high on my board.
Yeah, just the other day, before we traded out of this draft, one of the people I was trying to scout with, we ended up talking about our music tastes and music genres for about 2 days. Before I was like, wait, this was meant to be a scouting conversation. But I think at that point, I already knew that they were a good pick, even if they didn't, promise that they were going to earn to 425, or they didn't say they wanted to contribute in the war room. Because at that point, you talked for 2 days.
Yeah, I think anybody can say, I want to earn to a certain amount of TPE, but like lots of people want to do things. Scouting is about figuring out if they're going to, and the non-SHL stuff that they can contribute in a conversation is a huge indicator of whether they've got staying power.
Adding on that, and this is something I've noticed in the past few seasons. Well, I should say for season 79 and season 80, helping scout in San Diego is you have a lot of the rookies say they're going to do things, say they're actually going to help, and say, oh, I want to max earn, oh, I want to do media, and so on. But it's the rare few that actually commit to doing that, in my opinion, end up being the ones that will grow into the GMs long term and actually drive engagement in the locker room. Those are the ones that, as you get closer to draft day, you'll see start to put in the extra effort, start to put in not overtime, but actually work towards building themselves up.
Yeah, the ones who are already doing media before you even start scouting them, especially if I find a first gen who's writing big media pieces before their draft, like, okay, you're clearly invested in what the league actually is. I think a huge issue for a lot of rookies is there aren't a lot of things that tell you what the SHL is like as a user. And I don't think that's because we lack a lot of material. I think we've got lots of content to teach people, but it's so hard to describe the weekly cycle of SHL earning to someone. You try and advertise the league, you say, well, we're a sim hockey league where you create a player and you get them drafted to a team and they develop their skills, and the super unique aspect of sim leagues where every player and GM and everybody is a real life person. You can teach that to everybody, but at no point did you say, well, you're going to be writing probably 200 to 300 words a week, plus more if you want to earn money, and potentially get engaged in side jobs to help maintain the league's ecosystem. And most of your activity is on Discord. Like, that kind of thing is hard to teach people. And yeah, the easiest surefire sign that someone's poised for success is if they just kind of fit that mold already by doing media, asking questions, and being active in the rookie server. But you can tease that out of people in scouting. I love asking players, do you understand what max earning is? And I've had great users who say, oh, yeah, there's the weekly checklist, and here's the tasks I do, and I'm going to write media, and that's great. I've also had great users who say, I don't have a clue what earning is. Please tell me. And that turns into a whole conversation on its own.
I would actually agree, and this takes me to a particular user, actually. Sorry. There was a user, Nox2, I'm sure y'all are familiar with him.
Yep.
If memory serves, relative rookie, had gotten himself extremely involved, had already started doing podcasts, had already started writing media, looking for league jobs, and case in point, when he came to apply for the open deep dive grader position a few weeks back, when I was interviewing him, was asking questions, was giving very detailed responses about what he would be looking for in media, how he would change the department. And while I ultimately ended up going with a more experienced pick, you could tell he was very engaged and fit that mold rather well. And I think that as you scout, as you get to know the rookies better, is the type of player that will end up being the most successful, not only in the Jays, but in the SHL as a whole. And anyways, sorry for rambling.
That's why we're here. We're getting paid to ramble.
Yeah, honestly.
Come on, we're being a little bit more topical than we were last time. No one's brought up Fallout New Vegas yet.
Here, I'm going to be tangential.
Don't
real
start.
quick.
I'll get on a tangent about New Vegas. You won't be able to stop me.
Well, we've got about 10 minutes left, so if you want to get in your tangent, you need to hurry.
You know what the best
Yeah.
endgame weapon is? It's the Bozar. No.
Yes. Anyways, Gwen, you were saying.
So about the amount of writing that Roman brought up, I was talking with my partner a while back, and we decided to sit down and we were like, okay, how much writing? Assuming you don't get a single job, assuming that you just somehow aren't the pick for anything, even if you try. Okay, what happens if you do a average salary of like 4 or 5 million? And then you do Trooper every day, or the 6 times a week, and counted all that up, and then whatever left over was the writing, or technically you can do fantasy, which is a couple million more, but realistically what's left is the writing. And because casino, you could lose money, whatever. And we put in that it was like 6,800 words to write it out. And that doesn't include All-Star Week. That doesn't include Championship Week. That doesn't count, the 200 words, 175 words that you write a week. So you're writing more than
right?
Yeah, that's just media. That's media to get to max earn, the 17.4 mil a season. Assuming you do chirper and have an average contract. 6,800 words a season. And I find that absolute bonkers because I finished my I'm finishing my first semester in Columbia, and I think I've written about 3,000, 4,000 words in that one class.
See, that to me is bonkers because, as Caliph can probably attest, and Cake, I'm a bit of a writing fiend. I think over the last 3 months, I've written probably between 60 and 100,000 on the various writing projects I've been engaged in. So, but yeah.
Yeah, that's
You
too
have
much.
to like writing. Is the
Normal,
thing.
you're
Yeah,
saying.
it highlights a real problem, which is, and I think a lot of longtime users don't really see the importance of it because they've been around, they've had their moment in the sun of holding 11 jobs and making 100 million SHL bucks. A lot of users have been in that spot over the years and then gone back to a lower workload with a hefty bank. But it's your first few seasons in the league are your hardest.
Oh,
And
I would agree.
The first, rookie season is fun. Most people can get through a rookie season. The costs are lower for a reason, and that's to get them engaged. And I think that's great. Sophomore season is brutal. It is unforgiving. You have to make a ton of money. It's a huge jump up in cost from what you've been acclimated to your rookie season. And I think that's where we lose most of our users. Yeah, I have users every season who are shocked when I say, yeah, the cost of max earning is, what did you say, like 17 million?
17.4 million season, yeah.
Yeah. And that is a ton of money. As a GM, if GMing was my only job, GMing plus my player contract would not let me max earn.
With Chirper, it would, I believe.
Well, I look at it.
But that's Chirper. 90% of the, 90% of the SHL forgets it.
It's created a problem where you've got two types of max earners. You have people who are sitting on massive bank accounts, and you have people who have to have 2 to 3 big SHL jobs in order to cover their costs. And we don't have a ton of available jobs. We encourage new users to get involved and apply for jobs, but how many users have we heard the horror stories from of, I applied to 8 jobs and I got none of them and I'm not a great writer. Do I just have to go inactive and find a new hobby? And that's awful.
It's terrible.
If you can't max earn, if you can't earn 17.5 million
You're
a
essentially going
season,
to drown.
you're going to get beaten out. You're going to be a career depth player in the SHL. And we see a ton of players burn out after the J because they just can't keep up with the massive TPE curve.
Yeah, and for example, I've said this in private before, but if I didn't get the JHO job my first season, I would not be max earning. I didn't have the time for All-Star Week nor Championship Week, much less the rest of the money that I needed to make. Rookie tasks managed to stave off that problem another season until I got PT grader.
I would honestly agree with you, and having come from the screw-ups I made during my initial rookie season, having that TPE deficit is not fun, and were it not for the jobs I've had allowing me to use that pass, I probably would have been burned out already. So I can sympathize with you there, and with some of the horror stories I've heard from some of the younger users.
So I want to put this into perspective for listeners. We've got two relatively new users who are holding GM level positions who have been involved in head office at an extremely early age for SHL terms, who would potentially be inactive and out of our league if they hadn't lucked into some extremely difficult jobs that are really honestly intended for experienced users. What does that say about the state of our league and the realities of earning for a new user? Is it a problem? Is it something we need to fix? I think it is.
I would agree. It is something we really need to work towards fixing, but the question is, what would be the optimal method of doing it without hurting the currently existing ecosystem?
I think there is an option to overhaul the TPE scale to make depth players more important and more valuable. That's a huge undertaking. I would not be offended if HO told me that that is just out of the question right now. But there's also the option of giving money more freely and giving more opportunities. I can't think of many jobs in this league right now that wouldn't benefit from adding more users to their team or increasing the job pay. And I'm guilty of this myself. We have a lot of users who have several jobs. I'm on multiple committees and I'm a GM. We have people who are in multiple head offices. We have people who are in head office and GM. We have people who head multiple departments. And they all do super important things for the league. But as long as there are people like us holding several of these jobs just to make sure that we have all the money we need, there's not a lot of jobs for new users. And I think we need to be a lot less stingy with the way that we hand out SHL cash.
I agree. We don't need to necessarily make it easy, but I feel like being able to, mid earn should allow you to have more room to breathe as well. But honestly, yeah, pay bump is great. If you want to argue that sometimes there's only one person applying, just as like a fight against this concept, one, paying more helps, but also the new jobs that you create, if you do, doesn't necessarily have to be, they can be done by two people, or they can put that one slot in and allow someone else to have that extra income flow. And if no one applies, well, no one applies and you can still do it.
And I'm sorry, but that's where we're going to have to cut the recording for this week. It has been a pleasure having y'all on, and hopefully we can do a part 2 of this.
Oh, I'd love that. We'll see you around, eh?
Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having us on.
You're welcome.
Au revoir.